PLD, PJ Campbell, two mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are two mediocre white dudes on film.
It's got numbers again. Did you see the numbers? There was numbers on the screen again. It was throwing me off. I'm always confused when there's numbers. But welcome back to another episode of Two Mediocre White Dudes in Cars Getting Coffee. I'm PJ Campbell. That's PLD.
I am PLD, and that is PJ Campbell. We are in cars with coffees, really. You might be. You don't know. Well, you can't say it.
You can't. You don't know. You don't know.
You can record it.
Hey, PLD, it's me, PJ.
Hey, it's me. It's me, PLD. Remember me?
Oh man, we've been having a good one here over, before the episode started, just kind of talking about it. There was a movie about a spider who might be a man that came out. And we've been talking a lot about that.
Homeless, Way Home, Home Sweet Home.
Yeah, I don't know. He's homeless. So that's all I know.
Home Run.
But the other thing is, I have to bring this up before we get into today's shenanigans. Did you see the still that came out today from Jurassic World?
Oh, I did not. I've been kind of away from everything all day.
Not.
I see Spider-Man, and I kind of haven't seen anything happening today.
Okay, so they released this still today from the new Jurassic World movie, Jurassic World Dominion. For all of you hearing this was weeks ago from you hearing it, because we tend to record ahead of time because we're proactive like that.
We are.
But what was funny is that it was this picture of Chris Pratt on a motorcycle.
Oh.
And there's a velociraptor thing behind him. Apparently it's not a velociraptor. It's a new type of raptor that's like a real raptor that's never been in the movies. But it looks like a CGI dinosaur to me. So anyway, this picture...
I'm seeing it now.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to be honest with you. My first thought was, why does Chris Pratt look exactly like Daniel Craig in No Time to Die? So I've decided that I'm now renaming the movie to No Time to Die. No? So it'll be No Time to Dino is Jurassic Park 6. And that is my dad joke for the day.
I did see this tweet. I wasn't exactly sure what it was referencing. I didn't get a chance to really look into it. But now I know, and now I'm actually laughing at it. So good job. Job well done. This is why I have you on the show. You're humorous. You make me laugh. You're like a clown. And you know where I'm going with that. But
funny how? Funny like a clown?
Exactly.
Am I the Joe Pesci of this podcast? I don't say fuck nearly enough, PLD.
That's true. So you better start saying fuck more, because that's your job.
I can fucking say fuck as many fucking times as I fucking like, okay?
We are no longer a family-friendly podcast if we ever were.
Were we ever a family-friendly podcast? Fuck you.
I don't think we were. Fuck you.
Okay.
But you know what? I got to come clean about something, too. I wanted to bring this up before we get into our shenanigans. It does involve our podcast and our viewings. I sat down, I thought about it. I want to change my score for Scream 1 from the first Scream.
Oh, no. Don't do this to me.
You're going to like it. I'm actually going to boost it back up to 11. Because
yes,
you yelled at me.
Victory!
And I don't want to seem like I'm not someone who actually will be influenced by you all the time or influenced by people telling me all the time.
Just most of the time.
Just most of the time. Not even most of the time. I'll be honest. What happened was I sat down and reflected. And I went,
what happened was?
I reflected on it. I said, you know what, PLD, were you doing that just to say it's not a perfect movie? Were you looking for a reason that you didn't want to call it an 11 out of 11 just because you wanted to have some kind of room? You wanted to be a contrarian? I think maybe I was. I think because I said something about being 290s. Fuck, why would I care about being 290s? It was the 90s. I don't care about that. So in retrospect, it really was a near perfect movie, or close not to a perfect movie, where I should just give it its due. It's a legendary, iconic movie for a reason. It ground broke. It was everything that a legendary movie should be. We're still talking about it. Whatever, how many years later it is now, especially considering how little the sequels have done overall comparatively. So I will go back. I will give Scream its due. It is no longer a 10.75 from this podcast. It is a straight out 11 from both of us.
This is the best news I've heard all week. And considering Joe Manchin keeps fucking up everything in DC, it feels good to be in this world where Scream can now be considered a perfect movie. By two mediocre white men.
At least, yes. That's where it comes back to. It's a two mediocre white dudes. And this week, we were talking about Scream 2. And
Wait, there was a sequel?
there was a sequel. It actually came out less than a year later. Kind of shows a little bit. But we'll get into it.
I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't know. I just watched Scream again.
Oh, that's what it was? Oh.
You didn't tell me that there was a sequel. So I thought when you said we were going to watch Scream 2, I thought you meant like TOO. So I just watched Scream all over again.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Go ahead, go watch it now. And viewers, right. I guess, listeners, we'll be back. And we're back.
Okay, perfect. Well, now, that was I'm all caught up now. We're good.
He's caught up. He's ready to go.
Fuck. Shit. All right. Look, I'm gonna say you kind of nailed it though. You know, all jokes aside, yeah, this movie opens December of 1997, but it's like a week before the original release, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's actually like less than 365 days.
Right. That's amazing.
From the first one to this one. Crazy turnaround, crazy scheduling. There was a lot of production issues, including the script leak, which we're going to get into, that really hurt the movie along the way, in my opinion. This movie is almost the poster child for why you can't do things this quickly and this like close in succession with something else. Sometimes you need to be able to take time away,
right,
to make sure that your stuff is laid out the way that you want and that you aren't going to run into certain issues. Because Scream 2 is definitely the bigger is better mentality, and I don't necessarily think that rings true.
Agreed 100%. I will say it's kind of funny. We talked about this beforehand, before we went live here, or before we started recording. We both came away from our second viewings, or our reviewings, or whatever, with a little different take than we thought we were going to have going in. I remember last week, if you go back and listen to our last episode, we were both gung-ho about Scream 2. We're both saying, oh, this is pretty much, it was like, Scream is great. Scream 2 was almost as good. And we went in being excited. And I'm going to say overall, I'll tell you what I told you before we pressed record. I found that I liked some things more, but there's a lot more I disliked as well. So I'm very curious where you landed on this as we go along.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm a big proponent of the franchise, but I think that I've always told you, like, Scream 4 was always my favorite of the sequels. Like, it always has been, since it's come out, at least, I should say. Because obviously Scream 4 didn't always exist. But Scream 2 of the original trilogy was always my preferred of the two sequels. But every time I watch it, there's something else that irritates me or comes down a little bit or grinds me just like wrong enough that it kind of has just over time, just very continually gone down. Not a lot, but like it's little things that take this from a really great sequel to it's a really good sequel to, oh, it's a good sequel. Like, you know, there's some times that I wish I loved it more.
Agreed.
But I just, in my heart of hearts, as we get into it, I know that this is a movie that its intentions are very good, but it just is not maybe the follow-up that we deserved from the franchise.
Agreed. And that's not even talking about the one major thing that happened in this film that torpedoes it to me. But we will definitely get into that as we get further on into the story.
I'm just going to say it. It never should have fucking killed Jamie Kennedy. Never. Like, maybe the third movie.
Maybe. See, I could have got on board for that. But this one, I read Kevin Williamson actually had a quote this year when talking about Scream 5 about why he killed off Jamie Kennedy, his character. And he said, something, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it in front of me. It was something to the effect of, well, it was surprising. It needed to move the franchise forward. Killing somebody that the fans knew and loved made sense, and it made the stakes higher and things like that. It was kind of like this yada yada yada. I'm kind of like, but no, it didn't. What it did, you, if you wanted to do that, you kill off Dewey or something like that. Honestly, if you want to do that, which he almost did again, and he probably should have just left that.
Should have been Dewey or literally anything else. I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable in any capacity. This idea that it should have been Randy, and again, we'll get into it because ultimately, I just don't think that really helps the film. I just think it hurts it. I think that in a moment, sure, it makes sense that they think that it changes the stakes of it because now one of the OG cast members is dead.
Yeah,
but
the film
digress.
goes
We'll get into
downhill after that. I don't honestly
Very
say
quickly.
after he's gone, it's lost something. But
Yeah.
partially because none of the new characters really made much of an impact. But that we're getting way too ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's start it off, and we'll get there with everything. So
I'm going to take a stab at doing this.
I like it.
Boom! It's because this movie starts like just about a year after the events of the first movie at a screening of
Stab.
Stab is the movie within the movie, directed by Robert Rodriguez, who actually shot the footage for the movie within the movie.
Yes, indeed.
Starring
Tori Spelling in a great meta joke. I'll give it that. That was a nice meta joke.
That's one of the best jokes in the movie, actually. And but what's this is very meta inside of itself. Dimension Films obviously is a production company that Rodriguez was very close to, and so he came in to do this. Basically, it's based on the book by Gail Weathers about the Woodsboro murders, and there's a premiere happening at a theater, and we are introduced to two characters: Maureen Evans, played by Jada Pinkett, and we get Phil Stevens, played by Omar Epps. They are an African-American couple who are headed into the theater to watch the spooky movie. Omar Epps is very much wanting to see this. Jada Pinkett has no interest at all. Her Marine character is saying she would much rather go down the street to watch movie starring Sandra Bullock. Yeah, Sandy B, who actually, ironically enough, has a brand new movie on Netflix out right now, I believe. So Sandy B still kicking it. We are 20 years later. You're kicking it. We're proud of you. So we start the movie. It's at the theater. All the people are wearing the ghost face masks. It's good time.
Let me interject right there. What a weird culture shift that is. Going to that movie with all the masks and costumes people are wearing, that is so much of its time. Like, we obviously, with everything, all the tragedies have gone down, we can't do that anymore. You can't wear a mask in a movie theater anymore. This couldn't happen. It's like when you watch a movie and they don't have a cell phone, characters don't have a cell phone. It's like that kind of weird, like, detachment a little bit now that's totally of its time. It took me right out for a minute, but, like, I mean, I get it was of its time at that moment. People did wear masks all the time. The Star Wars movies, they would come in full Jedi regalia, stormtrooper helmets. That's what it used to be. I mean,
they still do that from time to time. There's still pictures of screenings. Like, I've seen a lot of pictures of these Spider-Man screenings over the weekend. People all in costume going.
Yeah.
Having a good time.
Maybe it's lessened. Maybe it's lessened because I know for a while I think at least in my area, they totally outlawed masks and all.
Post The Dark Knight Rises, I understand why.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? I'm thinking about this now, and this is a joke that I don't know if is it still timely? I'm going to make the joke anyway.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about this though. Do you remember as No Way Home was coming out, there was this article in, I believe it was The Independent from the UK. This dude named
Trent Grimm.
Yes, Trent Grimm, The Independent. But this gentleman named Lewis Chilton who was saying, "Cut the clapping, Spider-Man fans. You're ruining cinema." And he's some dude from Britain who's real upset that people are having a good time watching a movie. And all I could think about while I was watching Scream 2 was, man, Lewis Chilton would not have a very good time watching Stab.
He would have hated it.
He would have hated everything. This is an abomination to cinema. We're ruining cinema because people are having a good time watching a spooky movie.
Good call. Totally good call.
You're welcome. Internet, for my very timely joke.
So I got to say one interesting thing about this, and right away, the characters, Jada Pinkett Smith and Omar Epps have this conversation, and they go on to talk about African Americans in horror films, and they're decrying all this stuff. And like, it's a way of being meta, you would think. But I find it amusing that the rest of the film, I almost expected them to do something with that. Have like a important African American character or something. We don't. We have the cameraman, the new cameraman, who was a good character, fine. And we had Sidney's best friend, who honestly was the biggest waste of space in the entire movie.
Yeah, Dwayne Martin as Joel Jones, who is the new cameraman for Gale, is actually a pretty good character who I believe had a much bigger role, and or it was changed significantly once the reshoots and things began happening and the rewrites started happening once the script had leaked.
True.
I believe he was one of the characters who was taken down a little bit.
I could be wrong, so I think I don't want to like call you out on here, but I thought in my estimation, I believe wasn't Randy initially Gail's cameraman in the leaked?
He might have been. That I'm not sure. I just know that Dwayne Martin had a bit. Okay. His character had a different. I don't know how different the role was or what was different in the role.
Okay,
but he was one of the characters who has been pinpointed as this was changed along the way.
Okay. Well, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's less.
So I wish I knew more.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
I remember like reading the script leak a long time ago. I meant to try to reread it this week to try to see if I can get the differences. I ran out of time, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and I'll get ahead of it because I know there's going to be people who are yelling at us who are going to say, "Well, Williamson has said that there was dummy scripts in the world," and I don't really buy that.
No, I don't either.
I don't buy it for a number of reasons, considering the movie, where the script had leaked and what is changed by the time the movie gets to where it's going, doesn't feel really coherent.
No,
in my opinion, it loses a lot of itself as it's going. So, at least to me, it points to rushed rewrites trying to get the movie to where it needs to be. And like, look, there's nothing wrong with that. It happens. Shit happens. We've seen it. Like, I don't blame Williamson.
Right.
I don't. I think he's still a good writer. I think he really set out to do something special. I just think that this movie, unfortunately, coming off the railroad success that Scream ended up becoming, like the slow rollout and build of becoming a mega hit so fast and then wanting a sequel turnaround that quickly, just it hindered the movie.
I do wonder, maybe, I don't want to say that Williamson was lying about the dummy draft to protect himself, because there's potential that there was, both things could be true. There could be dummy drafts out there, and there could be real, like, idea that maybe we're trying to protect the killer, or the identity of the killer, but maybe I think both could have happened. The real script could have leaked as well. Or maybe the script leaked, and maybe the script leaked, and then he released dummy drafts to try to avoid that. Who knows? We don't know. We weren't there. But either way, the important thing is either way is that it affected the film. That's the most important thing. It does not matter what happened. It affected the film, and they had to rewrite it, reshoot, and redo things. And
that's the big takeaway.
Right.
There was something happened, and it affected the movie.
Yeah.
And it shows.
There you go.
And I am 100% with you on everything you're saying about this, because this whole opening is definitely like a meta play on what happens to black individuals in horror film.
Right.
And yet, yeah, they don't do anything with it.
You expect them to correct that later on.
Yeah, and instead, they are legitimately the first victims in the movie. Mm-hmm. Now, here's something interesting. I do wonder, does this film tip its hat right at the beginning of the film that there's going to be two killers again? Because when you notice, at the beginning of the film, when they go into the theater, Omar Epps is killed in a bathroom. He walks into the bathroom, and when he goes in, there's two masked Ghostface at the urinals.
Potentially. I mean, they do tip their hat a few times. That does feel like potentially a tipping of the hat there.
I feel like that's the setup showing us that there is going to be two Ghostface again in the movie.
Okay.
I just think it's so interesting because I almost feel like it was supposed to be a red herring, because originally it was supposed to be three killers.
Right. That's true.
So I wonder if
maybe, well, let me put it this way. He goes in, there's two of them at the urinal, and then there's the one in the stall next to him. So maybe it was the three killers. Maybe it was still trying to be a tip of the hat to the three killers at that point.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that kill, when Omar Epps gets killed, I gotta tell you, watching it again, I feel like the stab through it was a gruesome stab through the thing, but like I feel like it almost hit his cheek. I almost didn't see why he would die from that. Like, I mean, maybe it was further back than I thought, but it looked like it hit him in the cheek. And I'm like, the blade should have just gone through and like really fucked his cheek up, but like to die.
I thought it hit him in the ear.
Was it his ear? I kind of like thought.
Yeah, I always assumed it was the ear. And that's why, because then you're hitting right there.
Well, that would make sense.
But even then, how long is your fucking blade?
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't normally say stuff like this when it comes to scary movies and stuff. Like, logic really tends to go out the window, but like, even this, I'm like, how long is your goddamn blade? Because, like, I mean, not that those stalls things, like, as someone who's been in those stalls, like, those, they're not that thick, I guess, but, like, I don't know. It's weird.
It seemed
I've always thought it was weird. Yeah, it's always been a weird thing. However, the second kill,
yes,
which is a Marine, is brilliant.
Yes.
And it is maybe one of the most unnerving and frightening scenes in any movie. And this proves once again why Williamson is so good at what he does and why Craven is so good at what he does.
Yes, 100%.
And the reason I say that is because this idea that you're all at this, like, big screening for this scary movie, and they even talk about in the movie, like, why are we going to this movie about these white girls who were killed a year ago, or these white people who were killed a year ago? Like, why would we want to be there? Why does any of this matter to us? And, like, why are people hyping this up?
Right.
Like, it's actually kind of scary that people are so excited about this.
Right.
And so they're all at this movie, and the person who kills Omar Epps sits down next to Jada Pinkett, and she, like, leans over and she touches him and she sees the blood.
Right.
And so then the dude turns and stabs her.
Right.
She's dying in this theater, screaming, blood, in pain, goes in front of the screen, and people are throwing popcorn at her. They think that she's playing along.
He's a public.
They think that this is part of it. Yeah. Because Heather Graham's character is being killed on screen at the same time. Heather Graham is playing Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore in the first film. And so it's really playing into itself, and it's really fun, and it's really cool, and it's super fucking scary because you're watching this woman die, and no one's doing anything about it.
Not a thing. And it's an interesting point you bring up. I didn't really think about that, though, when you thought, because they did mention it in the movie. This is a real life situation. This is not like us going to Nightmare on Elm Street, which is a total fictional thing, and like celebrating the exciting kills and whatever. This is like going to like a real life event where actual people were killed and cheering it. That's a little fucked up, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's very much a commentary about how bloodthirsty we are.
Yeah, makes sense.
And we are. I mean, look, as a human being, we as humans are weird and bloodthirsty. Like, sports are only better because we don't kill each other anymore.
Yep.
We used to put people in a coliseum and watch people die. Like, look, week in and week out, PLD has to deal with me texting him and Jeff about Dexter New Blood. I watch a show week in and week out about a dude who's a fucking serial killer.
He does every week. Multiple times a week.
I do. Because it's the greatest show in at least 5 years for me.
I think he's trying to get me to watch the whole thing, but it might happen.
I am trying to get everyone. I want everyone to watch Dexter New Blood. That's all I'm asking. Watch Dexter New Blood.
It's funny. I actually was going to watch it at one point, but then I heard the shitty ending, so I never bothered to watch it because I didn't want to watch through and get let down by the shitty ending. But now that you're telling me that the new season's kind of redeeming it, I might go back. I
think you should.
Okay, we're talking about Dexter New Blood different time. This is a different podcast, so.
Or is it the same podcast?
Oh, good, baby. All right, you never know. Anyway, so we get the big scene, which is obviously, you said it best, they're trying to be bigger and brasher, and this is definitely a bigger and brasher version of the opening death sequence from Scream. Obviously, you have a kid in a house, now you have a fucking movie theater, with everybody rocking and rolling. So it's a much different, you're right away in a different world. You're right away like, okay, they're trying to amp this up more. I preferred Scream 1's opening still. I think it met everything I wanted it to have. This one was just a little bit too much for me. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't like bad. So.
No, I don't think it's a bad opening at all. I actually think it's quite a good opening. Yeah. I think for the setup of this movie and what it's trying to do, like, I think it's actually quite brilliantly meta. And I think it says a lot about the state of horror movies. I think it says something about people. I think it says something about the state of sequels and trying to be bigger, trying to up the ante, because again, to your point, what you just said, the first one's in a house, it's two people, really. Right. It's Ghostface and Casey,
right,
and her boyfriend's involved. This is two people, a Ghostface, and people watching it happen and still having no idea that there's a murderer among them. Like, I think that's just, it just shows that people are so blind to stuff. When they're having a good time, they're not thinking, and you just watch them go fucking crazy, dude.
Really
it's
bad.
Something. It's something.
There it is. So we move on now to get the Scream opening sequences done. We get Liev Schreiber back on TV, and I want to say right away, it was a brilliant move for him to cast Liev Schreiber in the first film, only having him on camera on TV screens and expanding his role like they did in this film, because he is definitely one of my favorite parts of this film. I think they nail his character perfectly. They could have done it so many different ways. The way they chose it, though, was very apropos and served the story well. We're going to get there as we go. We'll go a little bit further along as we get to the plot points. But I did like that. That's why I bring that up right away.
Well, and I wanted to bring up in you bringing this up. So inside this episode of Current Edition, that is the name of the show that Cotton Weary is doing, the person interviewing him is none other than Kevin Williamson himself.
That's correct. That's right. I forgot about that.
Writer of the Scream films.
That's a good point. Good point.
I just we can't not be talking about Scream and being like, look, it's fucking Kevin Williamson. You know, like that. It's really interesting, and I like that he gets his chance to kind of be on screen here. And
right,
it's
just like Wes Craven in Scream 1.
Right, and it works, and it's fun, and again, I think that the interesting thing about this is that, to your point, we really didn't know anything about Cotton in the first movie. We had just seen the video of him, like you said, on television. So in this, you're meeting him again for the first time on television, but it's an interview.
Right.
Like, now it's a very different scenario. Like, we're meeting him in a place where he's being vulnerable and human and talking about how, he'd forgive Sydney for the things that happened. Like, he doesn't blame her for it. And it all feels a little bit creepy.
Yeah. Absolutely. But so we get to see Nev Campbell now at this point, and I actually enjoyed also how they reintroduce her, so to speak. Gets a phone call and plays along with it. She's like, "This is happening for years now." She's totally desensitized to it, and it works. You get to see that happen. I'm so happy to see her. I don't know why I was happy to see her again, but it felt like coming home. Like, okay, great, we're here, we're solid again. I know this person. Let's go. Then we get introduced to her best friend, Hallie. And I got nothing. The whole movie, I got nothing. She was set up to die. She has so little character. So I don't necessarily blame the actress. It's just there's nothing written for her. Except for, I want to be in this sorority. So I'm going to use my friend's fame to get into this sorority. And then she gets killed later on.
Yeah, at least Neil tries. I'll give her that. And here's the big thing. And you and I were talking about it before we started recording, and it's as true then as it is now. Scream 2's biggest problem is that the characters outside of the original 4 just don't resonate.
At all.
They just don't.
Barely remember.
And again, that will come and play later, but that is this film's biggest issue in a lot of ways, is that I don't care. I don't buy into these characters in the same way, and that's an issue.
It's a big problem.
The closest that we get is Sarah Michelle Gellar's Cece, and the only reason is because it's Sarah Michelle Gellar.
We know who she is.
We know who she is, and so it's just really hard to have something like this where you're supposed to buy into these characters and feel the same camaraderie that you felt in the original, because the thing that makes the original so scary is that the killer could be anyone, and you like all these characters. They feel like real people. Right. It doesn't matter who it is. Like, even they just do, right? Mm-hmm. And so it sucks that this movie kind of gets hit in this way that, like, I just don't know or care about anyone. The only one that we get close to having that kind of with a little bit outside of Cotton, who again is actually technically introduced in the first, right, is Jerry O'Connell's Derek Feldman, who is Sydney's boyfriend.
Again, I think now, do we know? I gotta go look back at his thing. I kind of felt like we knew him, like Sarah Michelle Gellar. Like, he wasn't like extremely famous or anything, but he was known. What was that?
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me. That's right. Absolutely. There's a good point right there. I forgot. Yeah, he was in Stand By Me.
He was a child actor.
Yeah, that's true. So kind of like Sarah Michelle Gellar, we knew him beforehand.
Right. And I think that plays into it. And that's not dig necessarily so much as they were very smart to cast people that we would recognize and know.
Right.
But
well, they were able to get people we would recognize and know too, because Drew Barrymore latching onto Scream kind of set the page. Like, well, maybe these are a little more legitimate, and then Scream was this big, huge success. So the more famous people are like, well, you know what, I could do that. I could do that.
Yeah, but the thing is this time around, they really use those people within the in-universe movie versus within the movie itself.
True. Very true.
Because you get Tori Spelling, Luke Wilson, and Heather Graham.
Right.
Who are, at the time, bigger names.
Right.
And, hey, more power to it. I get it. I totally understand, and it works as a stunt casting sort of thing. And, that's great. It hurts a little bit. And I know that sounds catty or something, but, like, I don't know, man. For how much I love Scream and how much I adore that franchise as a whole, and especially that original, it feels like such a weird decline to not care about all these characters, because the moment we start to figure out, like, there's the next scene from this one where we're introduced to Hattie and we get to know all these people in the college, is this scene full of actors who I would have loved to get to know, but we learn jack shit about any of them.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's actually one of the more entertaining scenes because it's got the great Kevin Williamson quippy dialogue about movies,
and sequels,
which is like basically it's almost like they split up the famous rules dialogue of the first film. There's like a couple of different little mini scenes about the rules in this one. So once they wanted to spread it out a little bit, because later on, obviously Randy and Dewey have an actual talk about sequels and who the suspects are. But you begin that conversation here with Timothy Olyphant, who's introduced, Joshua Jackson, who's not even in the movie the rest of the time. It's like a cameo from him, and Sarah Michelle Gellar. And it's a great talk about sequels. You get this conversation going, and like the film nerd in us, we're always like, "Oh, I like this. I like this discussion. I can actually talk about this.
I could be a part of this discussion."
Exactly, and it's true. And what he says is true. It's also something I mean, you can have the Joshua Jackson getting the aliens quote wrong, and Randy getting to correct him on it. It's all great, like film nerd stuff. So for horror, I gotta say, I think I've said it before, but horror fans tend to be film nerd type fans a lot of times. So like this is the kind of stuff that we're gonna get off on. And so Kevin Williamson, he knows his audience and does it well. So I like the scene, but I do wish we get to know them a little bit better from there. Extrapolated, the scene itself is good. It's unfortunately doesn't pay off.
It's great.
Doesn't pay off later on.
And it's funny because I'm, as we're going through this, I always have the Wikipedia page on one page or like on one side of the screen while we're talking, and I'm looking at stuff. And in doing this, did you ever get from Scream 2 that Mickey is supposed to be Derek's best friend? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think anything in the movie really, like the Wikipedia page has that as like information. And so I'm just kind of sitting here going, I've never really taken that away from the movie.
I looked at the Wikipedia page afterwards and I got at the same thing, like, oh, they're supposed to be best friends. He's not a sorority brother, or a fraternity brother rather. He's not really hanging out with it. I mean, he just kind of like hangs around a little bit. But no, I get it. It felt like more like, honestly, it felt more like Timothy Olyphant was friends with Haley than with.
I agreed. Okay, so as long as it's not just me.
Nope.
But I wanted to point out, though, like you're right about the scene. I think the thing that works about the scene is that it sets up a lot of the ideas and the rules of what the first movie did, and it's the stuff that we had come to know Scream to be at that point. Like this idea that Scream is kind of metatextual in the way that it's talking about what it's doing, and this idea of, well, sequels are almost always inferior.
Right.
So the movie kind of pokes fun at itself, knowing that ultimately, unless you're The Godfather 2, you're not gonna top the original.
Right.
And so I guess in knowing that, I should be a little less hard on the movie because it knowingly also knows that maybe it isn't as good as
well.
That's totally fair.
Let's be fair though, because if we can read the history of this as it is, Kevin Williamson planned this as a trilogy, and that gives it a pass according to Randy later on. If it's a trilogy,
correct. Right.
So...
right. Yeah, because the middle chapter. That's correct. All right. But it's just kind of funny to me because, again, like, it's more this idea that it's really playing up the stuff that I really love about the original. And the problem is that this is like one of the only times that this movie does this for me personally. So it's a last grasp at the stuff that I really love about it before it starts to try to do its own thing, which it should. But the problem is when you don't care or you're not really knowing these characters, I don't really have a reason to.
It's diminishing
be
returns.
scared. Oh yeah, like bigger is not always better.
And why do you like that scene? 2 words: Randy Meeks.
Randy fucking Meeks.
We care because we know
Like,
that character.
that's
We
it.
love that character. We want to know what happens to him. So all of a sudden that brightens up. Like, oh, like Nev Campbell when I first saw her again. Like, oh, okay, I'm interested. I'm into it. Let's see where she is now. I want to see where Randy is. And here we are. Randy's still the helpless love slave, the unrequited love slave of Sidney Prescott, as he calls himself. We get to see him again. That makes me happy. And that's we're gonna get to it later on.
No, right. So then, to your point, though, right? They waste no time in also bringing back Dewey and Gale, and so they show up on campus, and their chemistry continues to be some of the best in the film. And you love these characters so much, and the thing I like is that, it's a year later. Clearly, their relationship didn't work out. There's a lot of give and take of, well, Gale kind of slandered Dewey in her book, and Dewey took it very personally. She had called him Barney Fifish in the book,
oozing incompetence.
And how his incompetence as a officer, and Dewey took it very personally.
Mm-hmm.
And Gale just saw it as trying to sell a book. I don't think she understands necessarily what she had done to him. But their back and forth is so great because you can tell that, like, there's still something there.
Right.
They are such a great core relationship of these movies. Like, they're a beating heart for the films.
Right.
And I loved being able to, when you're words, being reintroduced to them this way, it feels like a comfort blanket. In the same way that when you saw Sydney for the first time, in the same way that when you see Randy for the first time, it feels like old friends. And again, it's only a year later.
Exactly.
But there's something about seeing someone a year later. I mean, I can say from you and I, because of the pandemic, it had been it had been like a year and a half since we had seen each other.
Yeah.
There was a moment of real life seeing each other again a year and a half later that was really, really thrilling. It's not the same as sitting on a Zoom call talking to someone.
100% agree with you on that.
And I think that this movie kind of captures that weird dynamic of that feeling of seeing someone that you care about again in a specific way.
It's interesting you bring that up about going back into Gale and Dewey's introduction at this point. I will say, first of all, Dewey's introduction, man, he looks like a little perv. That's what he looked like.
A little bit.
This perv, like, kind of stalking this older man, stalking around the college. Like, it was not a good look. But Gale and Dewey have a great relationship, and I will say one of my problems were just a touch on, like, one of my problems with the sequels of 3 and 4 is that I got really kind of sick of this on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again of Gale and Dewey. Like, they kind of, like, every movie they had to reset in order to go forward again. Every movie. I don't mind it. I didn't mind it this time because it was the first time. Like,
Right.
kind of like, it's like, this made sense. Okay, logical thing. They had this tragic event. They were together. Gale wrote the book. Dewey's pissed off about it. I get it. Gale's regression as a character was a little sketchy to me. Sketchy is the wrong word. It's too strong of a word. I wasn't sure I'd earned, like, that she became so opportunistic so quickly again after, like, so she didn't learn anything. I kind of feel like you wanted to have her grow at the end of the film and having had to learn something.
Agree with that, but considering the line of work she's in, I also see the easy regression, if you will.
Which is why I forgive it to a degree. Like I said, I don't like, it's not a big hang.
I don't think you're wrong. Yeah.
It gets worse later on, though, and that's exactly my point. Like, for 3 and 4, when they start going this, it just, like, it's like, oh man, okay, so, like, they're not learning anything ever at this point.
No, Scream 3 is like the poster child of. We'll get to it.
We don't talk about Scream 3 now.
Scream 3 is its own bag of worms that we're going to talk about when we get to it.
Right.
But I'll say now that I think that Scream 2
It still
understands
works.
Gale and Dewey, and it still works.
That's exactly right. It still works overall. I like it. It's actually a strong point in the movie, watching them rediscover each other, watching them reconnect as a twosome. The only part I didn't like about Gale's introductions, I didn't really like so Nev, so Sydney's going to smack her again. Okay, so she smacked her again. All right, we get it. We get the point. But that goes away quickly enough. They actually start learning, and it's not that bad. And again, it's better because at least we care. At least we care about them, which we don't about a lot of the other characters at this point. So the next big part, I believe, is the frat party.
We also forgot to mention, and this is our bad because we got excited about other things. After what happens at the theater, journalists descend on the college because they're all looking for Sydney, and we're introduced to a local journalist named Debbie Salt, who is played by the absolutely fantastic Laurie Metcalf. Laurie Metcalf is the standout in this film as far as the new cast members are concerned. I love her very, very much in this movie. I think she's so great. And so we do need to set the table that because of the murders, everyone is coming to Sydney because they think that, well, they're going to be coming for you. The murders happened in a movie based on the thing that happened to you, and you're the survivor.
Right, exactly.
And so that they're all kind of there because of that.
Right. And
that is very important for later.
It is. Laurie Metcalf is just phenomenal anyway. She's always been a great actress.
She's Laurie fucking Metcalf.
So it was definitely a big win to get her to play this role. We actually almost should have seen earlier on that, if she was to be cast, that it was going to be a role that was going to be worth noticing. More than I did. I didn't notice it at first, to be honest. It was Laurie Metcalf, cool. Then I should have been there's something there. But I digress. So we jump forward to the frat party and to CC and Sarah Michelle Gellar's big scene. This is the first time it felt like, I don't want to say it felt like a real Scream movie, because the Jamie Kennedy stuff felt like a Scream. Seeing Gale and Dewey did, but this kind of recaptured the feel of what the first one was going for. It felt like loner in a house. It's a big sorority house. Guy at a phone calling, making scary things. This felt actually a lot like the Drew Barrymore scene to a degree.
It's definitely it's 100% supposed to be a callback to that,
right? And it works
because from this point on, as we learn, the targets of everyone are somehow related to the first movie's characters. And in doing that, there's this idea of refocusing on where people were murdered or how it happened. And I think that this one works really well for that reason. I think Sarah Michelle Gellar is so great in the scene as Cece, because she's at the sorority house. She's the DD for the night for any of the sorority sisters who get too drunk at a party. She's convinced it's her boyfriend who's drunk calling her.
Right.
And things go south very quickly.
Very, very quickly. I have to ask you a question. I didn't notice it, it was on the screen. I should have rewound it. Do we know what she was watching? Because I feel like Kevin Williamson would have put something on the screen. Or Wesker would put something on the screen.
Ooh, I didn't even think about noticing it. I normally do.
I know. I was like, what is that? Is there a movie she's watching? And I kind of noticed it just as it was going off screen. I'm like, I should rewind, and I went, nah. So we'll have to go back. Maybe next week we'll figure out what it was. Because I love those little details.
Yeah, I feel like I should have known that, to be honest.
I feel bad not knowing it. Ugh.
Yeah. So
we're sorry.
One thing also we have failed you. The other thing I wanted to point out, and Chief Hartley, who is the chief of the town, is Louis Arquette, played by David Arquette's real father.
Which is cool. I do like that.
Which I think is very, very cool. And he's in the movie a little bit. Obviously at the beginning, he shows up here. But this whole sequence is really great for the most part.
Okay.
I think that there's a little bit of the metatextualness that's almost too much at times in trying to recapture the magic. But I also think that they do such a good job overall of how it's handled. I think it's really because of Sarah Michelle Gellar that it works.
Okay.
She's there. There's a sorority party happening where everyone else is at. where Matthew Lillard makes a cameo, by the way.
Yes, that's
very funny. But as the partygoers are all there, Ghostface comes to the house. You can actually see him in the background, like sneaking around.
Right.
And the party is broken up by the news that Cece's been murdered.
Right. That's a good point. No, and it actually brings me to my next point. Is I remember Cece gets murdered, and it's a pretty good murder, by the way. I'm not there's
she's thrown off of top of a building.
Get the stabbing, and then like it's a rough. It heaves her right off. You're like, holy crap, that's brutal. But the murder happens. Everybody's leaving. Of course, Sydney's got to go to Jack. She's got to go back in the house. The plot device, whatever. The phone rings. Why the fuck did she answer the phone?
It's a good question.
Why the fuck would you answer the phone? First of all, I mean, first of all, you're in a party house where you don't know these people at all. No one's calling for you. What are you going to do? Take a message? There's nothing out there. You have the history of the phones and killers that you have. Why do you want to go back and answer the phone, Sydney?
And yet, maybe that's exactly why.
Maybe that's exactly why.
And that's why they do it. Because the plot contrivance of this all is that we both know she's going to answer the phone.
Yeah. So
because we know that in that moment, she's going to answer the goddamn phone because she knows that calls for her.
Right.
Because she knows that someone has already murdered 2 other people and now Cece.
Right. We get the attack on Sydney.
Poor Sydney.
We get the attack on Sydney. We get Derek trying to help her. And this is the part I don't like, and this is the callback that I don't like. I think you're referring to it. They tried to do this like, was it really Derek? Was it really Billy kind of thing? It was trying to like repeat that. It's the boyfriend again kind of thing. And it just rang hollow to me. The way it did. Like, yeah, he had the small superficial wound or whatever, and he was fine, but like it just felt off to me. I mean, you saw him get attacked. Now, granted, I know there's the partners, there's 2 people killed, but it just didn't feel right. And it felt like they're not going to do that again to us anyway, are they? You know what I mean? So kind of like it just rang false. Am I alone in that? Or did you
No, you're not. And what's funny is that the irony of that is I wonder if that was a scene that was redone to make that go that way.
Maybe.
Because Derek was supposed to be one of the killers.
I remember it was supposed to be, yeah.
In the alleged leaks version of the script, Derek was one of the killers. So what if the movie originally didn't go that way, and we're never meant to believe that Derek is one of the killers, which makes it that much more shocking that he is one of the killers?
I guess so, maybe.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel like they almost had to put that in there because now they're trying to play into it like it wouldn't happen again.
Right.
Because then it's too obvious once the twist happens.
Right.
So this feels like, again, meddling in the film. This feels like one of those kind of meddling type things because I've never bought into this idea that any of what Derek is doing is any more or less
trying to protect his girlfriend.
Yeah. In a very different way. Like, I don't know. It's never worked really well for me.
Right. And part of that might be, honestly, and I don't want to disparage him. I like Jerry O'Connell. But Jerry O'Connell, I can't picture him as a killer, as a prick, as an evil guy. He's just too doofy, lovable, nice guy. I mean, even when he's like
Superman.
Exactly. Even when he's like Trip McNeely and Can't Hardly Wait, that's like the worst you could expect of him. You know what I mean? That's the biggest. Like I had seen him being a dumb jock, but being like a mastermind killer, it just didn't ring at all.
Well, and there's just no real motivation in my mind for him to be that guy.
Right. Exactly.
You know, like there's just not.
Didn't work. So they're trying to give you the ring. They're trying to put a little suspicious on him or red herring. I guess the point is, maybe they're just trying to throw as much shit out there, knowing that we're going to be trying to figure it out. So just throw anything out there to put like, well, is he or isn't he? And it's good enough. But it right. just didn't. It didn't work as well as it did in like the first film, obviously.
I just didn't need to do that beat again.
Right.
Because we had already done that beat. Right. And I think that's the one thing that Scream 3 and 4 are actually better for is that they don't force that type of beat again.
That makes sense.
And I get again also that this is a year later, so Sydney may have been just trying to move on, so they feel like her being in a relationship is an easy way to create that sort of drama again.
Right.
But it's just not the kind of beat that I needed again, because it just rings hollow, like you said. Like, it doesn't feel like a real beat. And again, a part of that is just because we also don't know Derek. Like, the only thing I know about Derek is that he cares about Sydney.
Right.
Like, I don't feel him as a character. We haven't spent nearly enough time with him as a character in the same way, and maybe that's weird.
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's the bias of how much I like the original, and maybe I'm being more forgiving to the original in how well we know those characters, because maybe we don't know those characters as well as I think we do. We just spend a lot of time with them, and I've seen the movie a lot.
And you know,
Maybe
well,
that's
we've
my-
seen it, and
maybe
since
it's
we've
a
had a
bias.
franchise, we've actually seen them in 3 or 4 films as we go back to the first one. Whereas a lot of these
Right.
characters, this is the only time we see them.
Right. So I think that's kind of my point, is that even if I feel like there's some sort of bias that I'm admittedly saying right now as we're sitting here, it doesn't change the fact that I don't really get Derek's character
Yeah,
in a
me
way
either.
that I would believe that he would be that guy.
Well, also the problem that I had with it too, think about it, and just the whole thing, is you get tired of the is he, isn't he kind of thing. You also get tired of their relationship goes through. I mean, you have this sequence where, okay, so he's loving, he's like a perfect type boyfriend, yada yada yada. I'm gonna jump forward a little bit. We can go back. So you get to this scene where all of a sudden you're supposed to maybe be suspicious of him a little bit. Even Dewey throws some suspicion at him, and you can tell that Sydney's kind of like the next scene you see him in, which we're skipping a good scene, which I'll go back to, is the "I think I love you" scene.
Yeah.
Which is the one that everybody had auditioned for, I guess. This is how if you auditioned for Derek, you had to do this scene, and it's a fun sequence. It's silly, it's adorable, and I mean, I like the scene as a whole, but I don't think it does anything for the movie because so you go from suspicion. This is going to supposedly clear them of suspicion because all of a sudden he loves her and she's won over because I don't care if you murder or not anymore. You're singing to me, yay! You're going to give me your letters, yay! And then later on again, like it comes to the scene where she's doing the play, and Derek is all of a sudden possibly the killer again. It's like back and forth and back and forth. They're kind of getting like seasick between watching it. But
Yeah, and I wonder if it's supposed to be more that it keeps us on our toes as like the people watching the movie, which maybe is arguably the point, because I can see Williamson thinking that's the right thing to do, and it's very, but like you, I actually just kind of get tired.
yeah, the execution doesn't work.
Right.
I don't
There's
care
better
anymore.
way-
I might just
right,
do it.
there's
Show me
better
or
ways
not.
to do it.
Just show me if he's a good
100%.
guy or not at this point. I'm done with the whole thing.
It just is an unnecessary beat that we don't need, in my opinion.
Agreed.
It just is not for me.
Agreed. But around here, we do get the second rule scene, which is a good one with Randy and Dewey. And Dewey obviously taking Randy very seriously this time. And
Yes.
they actually have a great exchange with each other the whole time. And Randy tells you right away who the killer is. He tells you right away it's Mickey. He dismisses it later, but that's his first one in his mouth. No, it can't be Derek, because the copycat's not going to do that. He's going to want to break new ground. It's a meta thing. He's going to want to break new ground. He's not going to be a copycat that much. He's not going to want to repeat the exact same thing. He wants to be somebody new. It's Mickey, the freaky Tarantino student. He dismisses it so we can have fun. And they start talking about, well, why are we dismissing him? It could be you, Randy. It could be you, Dewey. They start laughing at each other in a way, like this is a really weird thing. But it's fun. It gets the audience involved again. But again, we're sounding like broken records here. But it's because we care about these characters and we have fun with them. We want them to have dialogues like this. This is what we go for a Scream movie.
No, 100%, man. Like, that's why the best sequences in this movie are the ones that involve the original cast members. And it's so funny that we say all this because, again, I'm always so forgiving to horror movies and especially sequels because, for the most part, when it comes to slasher movies, like, I'm not there for the characters.
Right.
The thing about Scream, though, is that Scream was uncharted territory of letting 4 characters live to see the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're living in these uncharted waters of so many characters surviving, I care about their well-being through the movie.
Yes, exactly.
And it means I care about the things that are happening, which makes the characters that I don't care about that much more frustrating.
Yep.
Because it's more glaring.
Agreed.
Yeah, so this scene is really fun. Again, it sets up a lot of what you said, like the second rule summit, if you will, of horror movies. One of my favorite throwaway lines in this also is that you find out David Schwimmer plays um, Dewey in the movie. Is this the scene where we also see the scene from the movie with Sydney?
I want to say that it is right around that same time. If it's not there, it's right before that, or no, it might be right there. Actually, I can't remember.
It's right around there, I feel
Luke
like,
Wilson,
because I think that's what brings up the conversation. But like, we see Luke Wilson, we see Tori Spelling,
right,
talking about like they do this full scene, and it's the scene where Sydney is confronted in the high school.
Yes.
By her boyfriend.
Yep.
And it's like straight dialogue, essentially, just from the first movie. How did Gail know that? We'll never know. Because as far as we can tell, Sydney really had nothing to do with these movies.
Yet there it is, just like the first film. Right in gear. Totally right in gear.
But it works. And this is, again, one of the things I really like about this is also one of the few times that we get so much interaction between Dewey
and Randy. Yeah, agreed.
It's very cool for that. Like, we don't get a lot of time with those characters. This movie, we get a lot more compared to the first one, but those characters really didn't interact a ton.
Hardly at all.
Yet, that works here because Randy and Dewey are actually surprisingly kind of like characters.
Yeah.
Their personalities are real similar, and so they're kind of fun.
Right.
And it's fun seeing them together.
Well, they have, if they were never friends, they have that connection to Sydney. They both love Sydney. They both want to protect Sydney. They both and obviously
right.
Dewey obviously knows how much Randy's in love with Sydney, so to speak. And I think he kind of loves him for that in a way, because it's like his little sister in a way. So it makes sense that they can connect that way over that.
Right. 100%, man. Like, I could not agree more.
Well, the next sequence, actually, one thing I wanted to bring up real quick. I actually like, speaking of new characters, it's a small scene, but I really found myself liking it. The scene between Sydney and the drama teacher, where Sydney's about to quit the play. And I don't know what it is about this scene, because it's kind of a sort of a pointless scene, except for he convinces her to go on and do this and to be a fighter or whatever. But I like the actor playing it. He does the best. He takes advantage of a very small role. He became pretty memorable for me. I think I kind of feel like he's been in some things before. I kind of recognize the actor. I don't know who it was. Let's see if I can find it. David Warner. He played Gus Gould. He's very much a actor's actor, it feels like. But he's been in like Star Trek's. He was in Star Trek 5. He was in Star Trek 6.
The original Omen.
He was in Tron. Time Bandits.
The big one for me is the original Omen.
Yeah.
Because again, and of course, for me, I'm a huge fan of Waxwork.
Oh,
Waxwork
of course.
is one of my favorite. I love Waxwork. Waxwork is fucking incredible. It's one of my favorite B horror franchise-y type things, and Waxwork 2 is even greater because Bruce Campbell is in it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also in Ice Cream Man, which I literally just watched because he plays the Reverend in it. And what's funny about that is that the only reason I have just watched it is that Joe Bob's special for Christmas just aired on Shudder, and it was part of the double feature. The first movie they did was Ice Cream Man.
Nice.
So I'm a big fan of David Warner. I think dude is incredibly talented. He's one of those you recognize him immediately if you see him, because he's been in everything from like the things we've named, but even on television, like dude was in Remington Steel and Heart to Heart back in the 80s, like big things that I know that I watched as a kid growing up. Of course, Twin Peaks, he was in 3 episodes, which Video Drew just shot up somewhere at me saying that. He was the voice of Ra's al Ghul in Batman the Animated Series. Like, dude's been in everything when it comes to stuff that we all love. And of course, for me, he was in The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr.
There you go.
Bruce Campbell coming in through. I can never, ever not be on the Bruce Campbell train.
I guess.
Thank you, and good night.
Oh, man. I was wondering how long it's going to take for you to get to mention Bruce Campbell. So it was
I got there.
Second episode,
I always
right?
find a way.
Second episode?
Didn't I bring him up in the first?
I don't know. You might have. I'll have to go back and check the tape.
I think that there's going to end up being a game of shots by the time that people start like really listening to two mediocre white dudes talking about all this stuff, because they're going to be like, oh God, he's fucking talking about Bruce Campbell again. Take a shot.
Bruce Campbell or Ed Harris. So there we go. That's all you got to do. Figure out a way. That's your drinking game. You've been challenged. Go nuts. But either way, going back to the Scream 2, I liked the scene for some reason. I don't know why. I thought he was he just struck me as a character. I wanted to know more about him.
I knew it.
Anybody else?
He was in Doctor Who.
Was he?
He was in the Cold War episode in 2013.
Of course he was.
I was like, I knew David Warner was in one of the episodes. I've been sitting here trying to figure out which one it was because I could see him. He was in that, and that was really good.
He's also in Dreamland, Doctor Who, the Dreamland.
Yeah, well, the less we talk about Dreamland, the better. Dreamland is not.
It wasn't that bad, but I get it. Okay,
fine. The animation freaks me out.
That I get it. I'll give you that. So
yeah, the animation just scares me. That's really what it is.
Okay, so we get the scene with him, and I do like that scene, and we get to see the play. He convinces her to stay on, and she does this production of Cassandra, which is actually a very good college production. It looks like it's a great production. I actually would like to see that production. Very well done, it seemed. And this is a great scene, though. I loved the angle of having Ghostface as part of the Greek chorus, flipping around. You're not sure if she's like just seeing it or seeing Ghostface, or if he's really there. You don't know what's going on necessarily. You can't really tell until finally all hell breaks loose and she freaks out. And you're wondering, is she having a breakdown or is he really there? But then they ruin it because they continue the Derek thing at that point. That's the problem again. All of a sudden, Derek's the one coming back in and like, oh, it's supposed to be Mickey. Mickey was there. Mickey, that's the first, there's your red herring number one. Mickey was supposed to be the one to pick her up, but Mickey couldn't because he had to go back and edit something. Or he had to dress as Ghostface in the scene. We don't know. But having Derek be there kind of ruined it for me a little bit. But overall, it's still a powerful enough scene, and I think that it worked. It did what it was supposed to do overall. I just wish it was somebody else that they had thrown suspicion on.
I mean, I really don't disagree with any of what you just said.
Okay, fair enough.
If I'm being totally honest with you. Like, it works. It's fine. But is there anyone else they could have thrown suspicion on? I know that's weird, and I know that's... I feel like I'm being so down on this movie, guys.
I know.
And I'm sorry. It's not normally how I am.
And overall, I will say I like the movie. I do like the movie. Too. I enjoy it.
I feel like I'm being so much harder on this movie than I actually feel when I watch it.
Which is weird.
But maybe because we're as we're sitting here breaking it down.
It's breaking down.
It's breaking down, and that's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And here we are.
I will say though.
Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So after all this, we do learn kind of what I said earlier also. Cece's real name was Casey, so we start to realize that the Ghostface murderers are literally murdering people.
Yes, they have that scene.
In order.
We kind of skipped that scene a little bit. Yeah. There was. So that's where Courtney Cox gets to Scooby-Doo it by coming up with it.
Right, and so it's very important that we learn that because it matters to the story.
Yes.
And one of the things I like, though, too, is that after all this happens is when we start to... They're walking around campus, and Ghostface is calling as they're walking around campus. And this is actually one of the better uses of technology in a horror film of the cell phone usage, because everyone by 97 is starting to use cell phones a little more frequently.
Right.
On college campuses. The reason this works is because now you don't know who.
Yeah.
It could be anyone. Because Ghostface is clearly watching them. You don't know really from where. So I kind of love this who is it running around-ish.
I do like that too. I do like that.
It's a little, it's actually, you kind of said it, it's a little Scooby-Doo-esque in a way.
Yeah.
Like different version of a Scooby-Doo-esque type thing, but there's something about that works for me. Because there is a sense of terror of not knowing where someone is, seeing a bunch of people on phones, and not knowing who this person is.
Right.
That I like. That works for me.
We also, by the way, get the second Friends reference here when they talk about Gail Weathers' news being leaked, and it's not her, it's just her head on Jennifer Aniston's body, which I definitely thought was a nice touch to close there. I always wish they had done more. They should have done like one for every. It should have been some kind of like Matthew Perry, Matt LeBlanc. Like just make the whole.
They should have really just gone for it.
Gone for the whole thing. If you're gonna do two, just do the whole thing.
I mean, dude, you could have easily made some joke about Sarah Michelle Gellar being the Rachel of the sorority house. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely, something like that. But oh well.
Unfortunately, though, as we continue to talk about this sequence,
I feel like we're dreading talking about it.
I just wanted to pretend it didn't happen.
I know.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
I know.
I don't like this scene.
I don't.
I like the stuff leading up to it.
I love everything about the moment when Randy starts all of Randy's conversation on the phone. I'm laughing my ass off. Like the first time, I remember sitting in the theater, and my biggest laugh was when he said, "You're never gonna get the girl," and Randy just goes, "Fuck you!" Like,
yes. Oh, it's so good.
So
I'm glad that we were both on the same page. To me, that is like one of the all-time great moments of a character. For whatever reason, just the "fuck you,"
because he was in control. He was in control of the conversation to a degree. He was the one lashing out. He's had the quick motor mouth about things, and all of a sudden, it was like he lost control for that split second. It was just so emotional, so true, so genuine. I use that to this day. I'll just go to someone and go, "Fuck you." It's so perfect.
Oh, it's so good. It works so well. It's one of my favorite moments in the movie. But here is where we reach the moment. Randy's on the phone with the killer. The killer opens the van door that he's standing in front of and pulls Randy inside, gutting him like a fish. It is violent and bloody. You see blood pouring out of the van. It is there's actually a really great shot of the side view mirror.
Yes.
And you see there's a really great shot. It's very Wes Craven's directing the fuck out of it.
Mm-hmm. By the way, speaking of that, I think there's a great quote I learned on trivia that there is a scene in Kevin Williamson's screenplay was described simply as Wes Craven will make it scary.
That 100% is how most of this feels, to be honest with you. I actually think, if I'm honest, Wes is the one who makes a lot of this movie scary.
Yes, it's his job.
I really like Kevin Williamson as a writer. We heaped all sorts of praise on him.
Right.
But I think that Wes does a lot of the heavy lifting visually, and that's the stuff that gets under my skin a lot of the time.
100%. I love that. The funny thing is, we say how much we hate this scene. I love everything about the scene except for who's
what
killed.
it is.
Like the shots are great. The blood coming out of the van, the rear mirrors, everything about the whole thing is perfectly done and perfectly what I want to see from that. I just didn't want Randy to die. I remember thinking, he's not dead, is he? He's going to come back somehow. He's fine.
And the kill is so animalistic.
Yes.
That's the crazy thing. Like, it's so violent. It's so animalistic. It feels so in your face, yet you're so far away from it. I just don't understand.
I don't get it either.
And I am going to pound. I have been saying this. I'm going to pound this point home continually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fucking understand the point of it. I don't. I understand the reasoning because you need to push the franchise forward. Sure, fine, whatever. Randy was not the character to do it with. I think that this series takes a significant fucking hit, and I do not think I'm the only one who feels that way. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I believe you do as well, but I don't think we're alone in that. I think that the moment that this happens is the second that this franchise takes a very different turn and it becomes a lot less interesting and a lot less fun.
Yeah, 100% it does. It loses its heart right there. The heart is ripped out and you're like...
And that's a problem. Because it doesn't matter how much I like Gale. It doesn't matter how much I like Dewey. It doesn't matter how much I like Sydney. Randy, for a lot of us, was like the major part of this.
He was us.
It was. And you took us out.
Yeah.
You killed us and to raise the stakes, I guess. But I still contend that I would have much rather it have been Dewey.
100%. I would take David. I mean, I'm sorry, David, but go away.
Yeah, like I don't need Dewey in the rest of these movies.
No.
I really don't. And
if Dewey had died and Scream 3 happened, they would not have had to find a way to get Dewey back in the film somehow that they had to do for Randy.
Well, right. Or look, I keep saying this, and I've said this to almost everyone I've talked to when we talk about the new Scream. I love the trailer. I think Scream looks great. But I can't help but think that literally all the stuff with David Arquette in that trailer is the stuff that Randy should have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Everything
100%.
about where his character is in that trailer is 100% where Randy should have been.
And so David Arquette is doing it and just doing a poor imitation of Randy is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's super frustrating and it breaks my heart. And I think that's why that is why this movie irritates me so much.
Yep.
I don't think it's that it's a bad movie. It's that I think it loses its way halfway through. And I still contend. I'm wondering if someone has a leaked version of this script, please send it my way.
Yeah, me
You can
too.
DM me. You know where to find me. I'm sure I could find it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like Randy was supposed to die.
I hope. Yeah. In a way, that'd be even worse, though. That would be even worse if we found out that the script got leaked and Randy lives through it.
Yeah.
How much are we going to be pissed off about the leak?
And if he was meant to die, he's meant to die. And like that, look.
That's their call. That's Kevin Williams'
That's their call.
But
I just think it deads the movie.
I do too.
And I think it actually deads the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I've made this argument time and again. I think it deads the franchise. And I like the franchise.
It was never the same after this.
But it was never the same. And that sucks. You're a movie and a half into this, and you've just totally changed the course of it in maybe a much less interesting way. And every movie now has had, like, the pale imitation of Randy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Even Scream 4 has the pale imitation. I believe it's whichever one of the Culkin kids.
Yeah.
There's a Culkin in that movie. I know that.
I forget who's in it too. It's been a while since I've watched Scream 4, so.
It might be Rory.
It feels right, but.
Rory Culkin sounds right. If I'm wrong, internet, yell at me later.
I'm sure you will.
I just think it is.
Yes.
Hey, I know what I'm talking about.
There you go.
I just think this was a massive mistake. It's a massive miscalculation, and I think the movie never recovers.
Nope.
And I think the franchise suffers overall because of it. And if you don't agree, I would love to hear your reasoning.
Yeah.
You know
convince
where to
me.
find me
Please
on
convince me.
You know where the PLD is.
Happy to be convinced.
We have to be convinced because I've been living with this for fucking 20 years,
right.
Man. Like, I just don't think every time I watch this, I tweeted it like in my last rewatch in October, and it was getting so much attraction on Twitter just because there's so many people who agree.
So sad. So sad.
It is.
All right, you know,
look,
we can't. I don't want to focus on it anymore. I feel like we're gonna break down and cry, and it's gonna ruin the rest of our experience. But go ahead. Last thoughts on this part.
Justice for Randy Meeks.
Justice for Randy Meeks. All right, let's try to move on. Try to get the rest of this film. Although, like we said, it does suffer. We get one good part right away comes though, and we get to see Cotton Weary a little more. And Cotton basically not attacks Sydney, but like gets hostile with her in the library. I think that's pretty soon thereafter. But I do like this.
That is. And that's an interesting dynamic.
Because what I love about this is Cotton Weary was falsely accused by Sidney Prescott, sent away to jail, and was brought back into reality or whatever, released, exonerated. You expect the character to be a good guy, a nice guy, like a forgiving guy. You almost feel like, okay, well, this is a guy he wasn't the murderer. He was a good guy. No, they turn him into this self-serving prick who wants fame and fortune, and I was here for it. And the main reason I'm here for it, it's a character you could throw suspicion on, and all of a sudden, that made sense to me. It was a great move by Williamson, and this probably was part of the original script, I'm assuming, because this was right away. This just seemed well crafted. Because the whole rest of the film, you're left going, yeah, you know what? Randy brought it up in the rule sequence that he mentioned something about Gail Weathers doing it because she's opportunistic. Everything he said about Gail Weathers could have been meant for Cotton Weary. Opportunistic, wants his due, wants his vengeance on Sydney. He has the motive. He gets violent in a way. And it's close to the scenes, almost like, well, there is a good person you could throw the suspicion on that wasn't Derek, and it worked so well for me. I'm hearing him saying the Randy death killed it. I'm telling you, the next scene I like actually really does good. But I can't lie. I say that's actually probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It really helps give if there's a positive grade in this movie, it's partially because of that.
I mean, look, I think that the Cotton stuff is far and away some of the more interesting in the film. And I do think it's actually, like, everything you just said is accurate. Creepy, opportunistic. Everything about him screams that he is literally probably the killer.
Right.
Because truth be told, Sydney put him in prison.
Yes.
Whether he really forgives her or not, she altered the course of his entire life. And you can feel it in that scene. It's murky and weird and uncomfortable because he's holding it against her still.
Yeah.
And he wants his due because he feels he's owed it, which in a way is understandable.
I get you can, even though he's a prick, you can empathize with him a little bit. You get why he feels the way he does.
He could have gone about it a different way.
Of course he could have. Well, that's why you say he's a prick.
Right. He's 100% still a prick. And it's a bummer because I kind of want to like him.
Yeah.
And, you know, they'd had the confrontation earlier that we didn't even really talk about, like Gail, you know, springs cotton bean on campus on Sydney, which is what leads her to being punched.
Yeah.
You can really feel in all this that Cotton wants so badly to, like, kind of put this behind him, but he's also using it as a star thing. And I don't know what's worse, but also that's kind of the course of these films. Every one of these people who's involved in some capacity, they're doing the thing that they're doing for fame or like pushing themselves to the forefront. It doesn't matter if they're the killer or if there's someone around Sydney. Gail's writing the books. Gail's doing television. You know, this is him trying to do television and getting his name out there. If you look at literally any of the killers, it's all about sending a message.
Right.
About being bigger than anything.
Right.
Leaving their mark. That's the whole point of Scream 4. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really a great scene because I think it kind of encapsulates a lot of what the franchise is in one moment that is also just so utterly creepy.
Yes. So good. So good. So let's move on a little bit. We have, obviously, Dewey and Gail solidifying their love for each other, but they're going to move together, move on, try to search for the killer and the footage that the cameraman had left them when he quit before he comes back again. We have a great sequence. They do their whole thing. It's actually pretty funny. He has the hand on her breast. They're like, Dewey, what? Dewey. Oh, sorry. That part was funny. But here to me was where the clue about Mickey is. They're watching their footage, and then all of a sudden, different footage pops up on the screen. And Gail says, "Oh, that's not my footage." So the killer is showing footage. Ghostface shows up 2 seconds later. Who's the only other person that has a camera the entire movie? It's Mickey. The entire time he has a camera with him. So right away they're telegraphing, saying, "Okay, this is the killer." But I think it was done purposefully. I think you almost are supposed to guess it's Mickey at that point. But they still have the reveal at the end for those who don't get it, who for whatever reason just... A lot of times there are people, like casual fans, who just watch movies and don't try to figure it out. So they get the reveal, oh, wow, that's cool. I think this was meant to be what was that?
So not us.
So not us, exactly. We're figuring, we're like, where is this going? Where is this going? We're like, that's probably the case. It's going to be Mickey. Which is good. This is actually one of my favorite sequences, except for one thing. The almost death of Dewey. I didn't like the fake out. I almost would have, like, unlike Randy, I was okay with Dewey dying anyway. And if you're gonna have Dewey have like the gruesome blood spitting out against the window as Courtney Cox is watching him die, stabbed in the back like 2 or 3 times. Fine, kill him. That's fine. If you're not going to kill him, don't give him a scene like that. Because when he comes back at the end, it's like you expect your killers to be supernatural. You expect Michael Myers to get up from stuff like that, Freddy Krueger to get up something like that. Your heroes and the other characters aren't supposed to.
Yeah, I don't necessarily anticipate my heroes coming back from stuff like that.
Because what's the point? If they can survive through that, then what's the fucking point? This isn't Jason versus Freddy. This is...
I'm sorry, Jason versus Freddy is not a real movie.
Sorry, Freddy versus Jason. I was actually saying, I actually mean the characters. I wasn't meaning the actual movie. I was like, just the characters.
Sure you weren't, Paul.
I am covering my tracks. Shut up.
Look, I agree with you. I love this sequence, though. The soundproof room is so perfectly capturing the moment of the terror of him being thrown against it and like trying to get her attention, or her trying to get his attention in the ways that it plays out. Like, it's just, you feel helpless as the audience because there's helplessness in that sequence. Like that, again, Wes Craven is really good at creating those tense, scary moments of just pure adrenaline and pure fear.
Right.
Like, there's something very scary about this moment and it's the way that there's so much blood. Again, there's something almost animalistic about the way that these killers treat some of the victims.
Yes. Good call.
And I said it with the Randy thing. I think it's here too. Even again, the Sarah Michelle Gellar one, to your point, like the picking up and the throwing the body off, like there's so much of this that's so terrifying and dark and creepy and like it just hits right.
Right.
And it works. And I really wish Dewey had died.
Yes.
Just like you said. No offense to David Arquette.
No.
That is not my point. I like David
Arquette. I like Dewey. I like David Arquette both. But just that was the person to kill, Kevin. That was the person to kill that gives you...
Kevin, I'm going to need you to get a time machine. I'm going to need you to go back. I'm going to need you to fix this because then it also undoes a lot of my problems with Scream 3.
100%. 100%. We don't need David Arquette going forward.
We don't. We don't need David Arquette going forward. We just don't.
We said we were done with this, but...
You don't understand how much this has hurt my life. I should. That sounded so
harsh.
It's so harsh. But I like this scene a lot. I like the tension. I like the, and something we didn't really talk about. We talked about the scene with, David Warner as Gus,
right,
the director of the play,
right.
And one of the things that I think of that's so great about that sequence in particular, and something that I think is brought into these sequences, there's actually a sense of almost like PTSD and this sense of anxiety that I don't think a lot of horror films necessarily capture. It starts with the sequence where she thinks she sees the ghost face during the play, and this like general just kind of breaking down of her psyche and her will in that moment. Like Sydney is going through something.
Right.
But I think you even see it with Gale. I think you see it with Dewey. I think that there's some sort of anxiety and like this kind of leftover pain and tension from those original events that just kind of feel slowly amplified.
Yeah.
To the way that people interact with them, or also the way that maybe that's why the kills feel so much worse. Maybe that's why, because maybe the killers, knowing what has happened, messing with these people and pushing them and breaking them is the thing. So there's this feel of just like existential dread to the moments that I don't think that any of the other sequels can capture in quite the same way, because you're not doing it a year later.
Right.
That is very specific to this movie and this movie only. You are picking up within months of what has happened. And I think that you feel the ramifications so heavily because of it. Even, like I said, down to the killers being these like totally animalistic, awful, awful people. And just toying with them. Doesn't matter how they're doing it, it's killing Randy. It's doing what they do to Dewey. Like putting Gale and Sydney through this.
Right.
Shooting Gale.
Yes.
We haven't gotten that far. But like they do everything in their power to break Sydney.
Right.
I think that's something really interesting that we don't really focus on is like this PTSD angle.
Yeah.
And I think that like what it did to everyone around them.
Great, and Sydney is a great aspect of that. I do think that that's one of the pluses we have of the sequels, which again we're going to get to 3. We keep talking on 3 and 4 a little bit. We'll get there, but definitely that's one of their strengths is that Sydney is very solidly a strength. You see her development over all course of all 4 movies, and my favorite part of the trailer for Scream 2022 or whatever is that Sydney seems like she's hit a new level again, and like she's really almost like the Linda Hamilton now to a degree, in that she's just like, it's not like she's like,
that's why
she's not like immortal or anything else, but she's kind of like just been there, done that at this point.
That's what I love about Scream 4. Again, I know you haven't seen it in a while, so I'm excited for you to go back to it, but there's definitely that feel in Scream 4 also of you gotta be fucking kidding me.
We'll definitely have to say. Spoilers, I initially definitely like Scream 4 better than Scream 3, so I think that will definitely at least hold true. I'm actually kind of curious now if I like Scream 4 better than Scream 2 when I get there. We'll have to see.
I've made my call, internet, everyone listening. I've told him many times outside of this, I'm waiting for the PJ, you were right. Kind of like you were right. As PLD dies in my arms, you were right.
You were right. Tell your sister.
He's gonna like Scream 4.
Tell your
more
sister.
Than the other 2
You
sequels.
were right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad that you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Of course.
Return of the Jedi here, the greatest Star Wars film of all time.
Yes, the 4th greatest Star Wars film of all time.
Oh, that's objectively wrong, but that's okay.
We'll do Star Wars at some point too. At some point.
Oh no, we won't. Oh no, we won't. I don't want that. I don't want nothing to do with the internet and Star Wars.
I don't care. I've always been kind of the mind of fuck the internet. That's just me.
Yeah, but the internet needs to listen to us.
That's true.
We need the internet.
True. No, I don't mean that. I just mean fuck the trolls. Fuck anybody who isn't accepting of anybody else's opinion. That's what I say.
Except the objectively wrong take that Return of the Jedi is only the 4th best Star Wars.
It is, which it is, but that's okay.
No, it's objectively wrong.
I also will throw out there. The only reason I think that Scream 2 still might beat Scream 4 in my eyes is that even with death of Randy, we still get Randy. Just saying.
Fair.
Just saying that's a hard hurdle to overcome. But
Fair.
all right,
I can't argue that.
let's move on as we're getting close to wrapping up. Got the big ending here. We had a couple of little scenes that aren't really much to discuss about. You get to see Derek taken hostage by his frat brothers, which is a plot device, which is good. It's fine. Nothing cool. We do get to see...
Yeah, because he gave you brought it up earlier. He gave his letters to Sydney, which you're not supposed to do.
Which is actually a good thing. That's again, just writing wise, it's a nice through line. We do get we never mentioned the detectives that were watching over Sydney, but we get the detectives, Sydney and Hallie in the car, and that whole sequence there, and the death of Hallie and the death of the detectives after a very dated a gay joke. Don't.
I also don't love this sequence.
I don't love the sequence at all.
Actually, I don't love this sequence at all. I think that the whole car chase is far and away one of the low parts of the entire franchise.
Agreed. Part of it is because I don't care about Hallie at all. But then it's not even
part of it.
It's not even done that well. There's just logic gaps, and they crash. They have to get through the whole thing where she has to crawl through the cop car and crawl over the Ghostface killer. They get out. They go, and it's just set up around. They walk away. Sydney decides she has to go back and unmask him. I get that from Sydney at this point. Fine. They come back, and Ghostface is gone. And they didn't hear the door open. They didn't hear anything about him leaving. They just disappeared. Okay, horror logic. But then it's the worst shot. You turn around, and Hallie's still back there. How did Ghostface get around to where he is to take Hallie out? But it's so poorly shot because it's so telegraphed. I hate saying that because I love Wes Craven, but this is his worst shot in the film to me. He turns around, she's looking back, and Hallie's like not coming towards her at all. It's just like a very distant, like, what? And you're like, oh, you're dead. And then sure enough, and she's dead. But again, I don't care though, because I could care less about Hallie.
I've never loved this sequence. I think that this actually drags the movie to a crawl.
100%.
Which is crazy because it's an action beat.
Yeah.
An action beat should never make me bored.
This did.
Michael Bay, Transformers 4 and 5, but besides the point. Look, action is supposed to be kind of frenetic and kind of, it's supposed to get your adrenaline going, and I just can't help but feeling kind of whatever about the whole scene.
It should be tense when you're crawling over Ghostface, the unconscious Ghostface. It should be tense, but I don't feel it. I don't feel tense about it at all. I'm like,
no, I don't. Like, I've also seen the movie a lot of times.
Yeah.
Maybe that plays a part in it, but like, I just never. I think even the first couple of times I saw it, I never felt that tense, like, feeling of dread in that moment. And maybe it's because it just feels so out of place.
It does. It really does.
There's not another sequence in Scream that feels like this, like in any of the movies.
Like, the funny thing is, we're good towards the end, and I after the scene we just talked about, I was like, I'm throwing this in a scene. I'm like, yeah, this kind of happens. Let's get to the ending part. That's the big thing to talk about, because I just don't have much to say about it except for, It seemed was basically the only thing it serves is, we have to get rid of Hallie some way. We got to get rid of the detectives now. That's it. That's really all there was.
Yeah. And again, that kind of plays into the stuff we've talked about with the cast, and that's not the cast's fault. It's that the characters just aren't interesting.
Right.
That's just what it is. And that's unfortunate, but it's a thing that happens. Yep. And it doesn't hold me back from enjoying watching the movie, but It definitely holds me back from being like, man, this movie is just the best.
Right. Agreed. So there we are. Let's just get right to it now. We're into the ending. We're in the end game now, as we say. The final big reveal, the final big moment. You get the thing where...
Dr. Strange, I'm going to need you to calm down.
Sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
So we get... Sydney sees...
Did you get to it now, please?
I'm getting there. We're getting there. All right. So we see Billy, because basically that's what he is. Timothy Olyphant's Mickey reveal himself. And it gets worse. I feel Mickey's character actually gets worse after the reveal than he was even during. Like, in the beginning, before the reveal, he was kind of a nothing character. He was just the film geek character. After the reveal, besides the weird, like, I'm going to throw a suspicion on Derek even more. Yes, Derek is tied up. And yes, he's my partner and he's tied up. Oh, it's so, but he's still on my side. Oh, and then shoot him. Like, why? I don't get it. But I will say also is that Timothy Olyphant, after the reveal, just basically becomes Stu. Before he was kind of more Billy, now he's more Stu. He does this whole, like, I'm going to be wacky and I'm going to be weird. I'm going to be talking about the defense of the movies. Right, Sid? I just felt like I was watching Timothy Olyphant do a Matthew Lillard impersonation and doing it poorly.
The turn has always been weird to me because suddenly Mickey as a character doesn't feel real.
Right, it's a cartoon.
And it's always kind of pulled me out a little bit. And I think it's because I just don't care about the character. And so that plays a big part in it. But it is a little surprising because I actually really like Timothy Olyphant.
I love Timothy Olyphant.
Incredibly, incredibly talented. And so he's fun to watch, but it's just such a weird turn.
It's hollow.
Because we also just don't know the character.
Right.
I wish we had known more about him because arguably the idea is that he's the anti-Randy.
Right.
Right? Like the idea essentially is he's anti-Randy.
Yes.
And Randy, before he dies, does the super animated fuck you, and like so it's not even necessarily that he's being Stu. He's trying to be Randy.
Yeah.
And he's trying to be Randy, I feel like, because he's trying to make Sydney uncomfortable. He's trying to fuck with her head. because Randy was like the only surviving friend that she had.
Yeah. Interesting point.
But it still doesn't work.
No.
It still feels weird. It still feels terribly out of character for the Mickey that we've seen throughout the movie, which I guess is arguably part of the point. Whereas the Laurie Metcalf, Debbie Salt twist of her being Billy's mom, I believe her twist because she was playing a character the whole time.
Yes, exactly. Because we don't see enough of her that when she does a twist, it's kind of like you're not betraying anything we've seen. It's like, oh, so you were hiding it the whole time. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Because also, as she points out, Mickey's kind of an idiot.
Yes.
Like, he's just a pawn in all this. So I don't believe that Mickey put on a face through all of it.
Right. And Laurie Metcalf's Unhinged is much better than Timothy the Elephant's Unhinged as far as cartoon levels go.
Yes, because Laurie fucking Metcalf.
Exactly.
Like, we have 3 words for you. Laurie fucking Metcalf.
Laurie fucking Metcalf.
And she's so good in this. The whole reasoning, of course, really just comes down to, again, like, you fucking killed my son. Like, Mickey has no rhyme or reason for being here other than just to be a pawn.
I'm gonna blame the movies. And I was like, oh, really?
And then he's gonna be famous and he's gonna get off and people are, again, putting your name out there.
Yeah. So I gotta ask you, when she reveals that she's Billy's mom, did that seem like too much? Was it almost like too much for you? It was like, oh, really? That's where you're going to go down that road? Or did it work for you?
No, it's always worked for me.
Okay.
And the only reason is, again, like, this is one of those times of the metatextualness actually working for me. And this is, like, so clearly a riff-off of The Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
And the reveal of a, spoiler alert for The Empire Strikes Back that came out in 1980.
The greatest Star Wars film of all time.
The third, but that's okay.
Objectively wrong.
No. That's you're objectively wrong. But I've always liked that because it does feel like a play on that, but it's like the evil. I mean, I guess it's technically the evil version in that movie too. Yeah, but in this one, Sydney like deals with it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, Luke is shocked and gets his hand cut off and kind of whines about it and flies away.
Right.
Sydney's like, God damn it! Like, really?
Well, it's not her mom. Let's be fair. It's not. She's not discovering that her mom is the one behind it. Like, if it was Maureen Prescott, then it would be.
But it's still someone that was arguably as important in the life of Sydney in a capacity.
Was she?
Right?
Do we know that though? It's kind of. I mean, I guess she plays it off that way. But like, going back to original Scream, like, it seems like she'd been with Billy for a year. And that was because she had been fucked over. So it's like I kind of got the feeling initially from Scream 1 that they barely knew each other.
They probably don't. But I mean, in my headcanon of all this is the idea that someone like that is kind of important. Right?
Right.
Like, in a way, someone like that, because ultimately, Sydney's life revolved around her life.
Right.
Whether they meant it to or not. So the reveal that she is someone that would be related to her in some capacity has always worked for me because it's someone that's still arguably someone who should be a parental figure in her life.
Now,
for better or worse. That's a theoretical parental figure.
Right. I get that.
So, I don't know. It's never felt like too much for me because I can understand the reasoning, and that makes more sense than I'm blaming it on the movies.
Here was my problem with it, and I got over it overall. I mean, it didn't like kill it for me, but like they said, the whole movie that she abandoned Billy,
yeah,
and abandoned the father, and they were talking. That's what Billy's whole impetus was. So why is she coming back now? Like, it almost would have made more sense if it was Billy's father.
Right,
I wanted revenge for it.
I mean, I think that just comes down to
Laurie fucking Metcalf.
Laurie fucking Metcalf, but also these fucking psychopaths just want their names.
Yeah. So,
and some people are sociopaths, and sometimes they see things in. It doesn't matter if I was really around or not. but it fucking affects me, and I've decided I'm going to do something about it.
Right. I can abandon my kid, but you can't kill my kid.
Right, exactly.
Which is why I guess I can like get past it. It doesn't like kill it for me, but I did have to take a little while to kind of like make it work for me. So that, like,
hey man, I get it. I don't think it's the world's best,
right?
But of the twists, I prefer it. I still contend that the Cotton Weary reveal probably would have been less shocking, but it would have made more sense.
Right.
Because Cotton being one of the potential murderers has always made sense to me.
Right. Speaking of Cotton, we get that here when Cotton comes in towards the end there after the little to the day. You get that moment where he's got the gun on. I love that moment because, quite frankly, I don't know what he's going to do. Like, they play it off well enough that you get to the point where, like, well, I could see him going either way. Now, here's my question for you. He says afterwards he never would have killed her or never would have hurt Sydney. Do you believe him? Do you think he was actually literally trying to weigh it? Was he weighing his options there?
He was 100% weighing his options.
Okay.
The Cotton that we know in this movie is 100% weighing those options.
And I only asked
saying that
because retroactively, going further on, like you see Cotton later on in the franchise, he's much more of a grounded character, more of a heroic character to a degree. Like he kind of has that moment where he
has learned though.
Maybe that's what it is. So I think it's retroactively. I'm asking.
That's why because I think even once you get to Scream 3, because I think even when I was watching them originally, where this all kind of began stemming from, to be honest, was when you and I were talking about the franchise, and I had been rewatching them, and I think I even made a note to you, and we'll get to it. Like, Scream 3 is a little weird because it does retroactively kind of take him backwards, but maybe the point is that maybe he never grew.
Maybe.
Like, Sydney's the one who puts the hero thing on him.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he's been wanting it.
Right.
But at the same time, the Cotton in this is kind of a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a creep, and he kind of sucks, to be honest with you. Yeah, he saved Sydney, but in what capacity?
I mean, I'm saying that it retroactively. I mean, he really is only in the next scene in Scream 3. He dies right away, but he just felt like a different character in that than he did in this one.
Fucking spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen Scream 3. God damn it, Paul.
Well, if you're watching these, I'm assuming you've seen the franchise by now.
Yeah, but we haven't released a Scream 3 podcast yet.
That's true.
This is the Scream 2 podcast.
That's true. I apologize.
What if someone was listening through
well, guess what?
and was like, man, these guys are really insightful for being two average white dudes.
Mediocre white dudes.
Yeah, mediocre is much better. That's what we were going for. Two mediocre white dudes. We were doing a great job, and then like an hour and 40 minutes into this podcast, because I'm name dropping where we're at because we can talk. That's all I'm saying. Is that you dropped that there. You didn't give any warning. You weren't like, man, by the way, so guess what happens at the beginning of Scream 3 in the Scream 2 podcast? You know what? Think of it as in like today's jargon, I am showing you the opening scene of the film before you go watch the film. It's now on YouTube. You can watch the first 10 minutes of the movie before you watch Scream 3. Now you know. It's like that kind of stuff. Yeah, but I don't like when they do that. Like when they did that with In the Heights, they like weirdly edited a scene from the end of In the Heights into the beginning of Into the Heights, and then like kind of weirdly didn't actually have the whole opening number, and it was very confusing, and I didn't take that personal at all.
Okay. All right, anyway. Fair enough. All right, I apologize.
Get shit together is what I'm saying.
I apologize to your sensibilities.
I'm talking to the people that are listening to us. That you might have just spoiled it for.
PJ, the man of the people.
I am the man of the people. There's a reason that I should be running for, I don't know, student body governor or something
like that. I don't know.
Something like that. I should never be a politician.
All right. So we get it done. They kill off Mom. Timothy Oliphant has
This is Scream 2, by the way, so it's okay if you're still listening.
You're right.
Sorry, person who never saw Scream 3, that Paul just spoiled it.
I apologize. Write me a DM. I might send you a thank you note or an apologetic note or something.
He's going to send you a $15 card to Yogurtland. You're welcome.
That could happen. Could. Might not. It probably won't, but it could.
Unless your name is Jake Yacovetta.
Yeah, definitely not for Jake Yacovetta. Fuck Jake Yacovetta. But anyway, all right. So we have Billy Loomis's mom bites the dust, We get one more callback for Timothy Oliphant. Although I kind of felt tired at that point. I'm like, okay, kill him again. And then
which is another play off of Scream.
Right. It just was unnecessary at that point. But there we are at the end. We finish it. Gail has lived, even though we actually didn't talk about how she brings Gail in, and there's that split second of, oh, is Gail a killer? But it's...
Well, and I referenced it earlier. Gail gets shot.
Yeah, Gail gets shot. But she lives. Everybody gets through. And we find out, of course, after we go outside, and there's Deputy Dewey alive and well. After her cameraman comes back. Well, yeah, alive and not well, because his scar tissue stopped the knife from doing more damage, supposedly.
Scar tissue that which you saw. All.
And her cameraman comes back. He's ready to go now. He spent the whole film going, I don't want to be here. I don't want to get killed. I don't want to get killed. And he comes back. I'm ready to go now. And she's like, oh, I got to go see Deputy Dewey. And they reunite. So Courtney Cox has now learned her lesson again.
Allegedly.
Again. And the couple have reunited. Again, to live happily ever after, right?
Again.
But either way, Sydney's left. The funny thing about that is Sydney's pretty much left alone at this point. There's nothing left for Sydney. I mean, the boyfriend's dead. Her best friend's dead. Randy Meeks is dead. Sydney's like...
Sydney and Peter Parker have very similar trajectories.
Maybe she should become Spider-Girl. Spider-Woman. Spider Sydney?
Spider Sid.
Spider Sid.
Spider Sid.
I like that.
Like that better. I would watch the shit out of a Spider Sid movie.
Let's do it. Let's write that up. Let's get that going.
I would watch the shit out of a Spider Sid movie.
All right.
That's what I want.
Any final thoughts, PJ, before we grade this son of a bitch?
Yeah, man. Look, I know we were kind of hard on it, which is very unusual for us. That's not the tone of our conversations ever. But overall, I actually really do enjoy the movie. I just think that there's a lot of the stuff that is contrived at times that doesn't always work for me. The Randy Meeks of it all is just like the biggest problem. Again, I think it just kind of deads the franchise in a bad way. I think that he should have at least lived to the third movie. I think that it would have made more sense if he at least died in the third. If you were going to kill him, the third movie was the place to do it. He should have at least gotten that far, because for all intents and purposes, everything about this character is he should have known better, and his guard never should have been down that hard. I think that it does a lot of really good stuff. Wes does some of his best filmmaking in this movie. He also does some of his worst. It's a real mixed bag, surprisingly so, to be honest. Like, for how much I enjoy watching it, it is a much more mixed bag. And I think that that's because you're falling so differently from the first. Like, the original is a perfect movie. You can nitpick it, sure, but like, it is a perfect capsule of a film. Scream 2 can't be that movie. It knows it can't be that movie. It tells us it can't be that movie. And because of that, we're more forgiving. Because at least it was upfront about it. But all the same, just because you're upfront about it doesn't always mean that we're going to always be totally forgiving to your sins. So ultimately, it's a really fun movie. It's a good follow-up. It's not a great follow-up.
Okay. What do you grade it as then out of 11? Because we turned it up to 11 here.
Yeah, we turned it up to 11. I'm going to go 7.5.
7.5. Okay, that's fair.
I think it's like a very solid, good rating for that movie.
Okay, my final thoughts are that I would say I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I do think we're actually harder on it because we like it. I think we are finding like things wrong with it. We're like, we like this thing, but I feel like if we didn't like it, we just wouldn't care as much about some of the egregiousness of it. Like, I feel like if it was less, or we kind of like it sucks the whole way through and wouldn't be so emotionally upset by it to a degree.
Right.
With that being said, it is definitely a further step down than I remembered. I miss Randy. I still miss Randy to this day. I'll always miss Randy. It is a good, very watchable follow-up. It definitely belongs in the franchise as far as that goes. I think I'd watch 1 and 2 back to back, and I'd have a great night.
Totally. Absolutely.
I'm going to give this... This hurts my heart saying it. I'm going to give it a 6.5.
I can't fault you for it. This isn't like the last time where I was going to yell at you over it. Like, this feels... It feels fair. Like, I get it. I think I'm a little more forgiving than you are overall for some of the stuff it does. So, like, for as hard as I was on it, there's a lot of stuff I really like that it elevates it enough that I'm like, it's still really good. Like, I don't think it's almost 50% lesser. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, 6.5 is telling me that I'm like 50% lesser almost than the one before it. And so I can't go quite that low.
I was not going to go that low. I was going to go to 7, but then I had to give an extra 0.5 off for the death of Randy, for how much it fucks the franchise.
No, I get it. I mean, look, I went from an 11 to a 7.5.
Yeah.
You did something. You didn't quite hit. It's okay. It's still fun. It's still good.
It's not a bad movie at all, and I will watch it.
Not a bad movie.
But I'm very...
Too long. I'll say that.
It is a long.
It's 2 hours exactly.
A couple of scenes too long.
Yeah. It's a long movie. And I want to say real quick before we get out of here, I think we've touched on it a little bit, this idea of like the leaks and the scripts and the production problems. I think there's a reason that Scream 3 now takes 2.5 years to get made versus less than a year for this one.
Agreed.
I think that they see that there's issues. I think they see that the writing is on the wall of, we need to take more time with it. I think we need to make sure that whatever happens next works better. Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
Does not.
But they took more time to try at least.
Right.
And that's good. It's not... I like when people try to learn. I wish that this movie had had a little more time, because I think that a lot of my overall issues would have been fixed if they had had a little more time and a little less trying to meet a date.
Agreed.
Overall, that's just kind of a thing that I think of a lot of the times. I mean, there's other franchises I can think of that could have really benefited from not being locked into a date and letting their movie take the time it needed to be made versus trying to just put stuff out because of the shareholders.
And yet it's funny you say that, because of considering what we got. We got a better movie with the rushed version than we did with the not rushed version. But you know what? I digress. We'll get there. We'll find out.
Yep.
So, good.
Excelsior.
That's PJ. I'm PLD. We're two mediocre white dudes. And what's your catchphrase? We had a catchphrase you had last time. You remember what it was?
Fuck, I don't even remember.
Something about keeping it mediocre or something. Always be mediocre.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Like, keep it mediocre.
Mediocre.
Good here, man.
Figure it out.
Be the best, most mediocre version of yourself possible. We appreciate you guys. You know where to find us on the socials.
That's right.
Twitter, Instagram, whatever.
Wow.
We write, we do things, we drink, and we know stuff.
That's true.
Stay mediocre.
Stay mediocre. And by the time this hits, I actually might, I'll say it here, I might have my Patreon up. So hit up patreon.com/PLD projects. And if I have gotten up, because it's in the future and I haven't quite gotten there yet, bookmark it, because it will be coming at some point. We're going to have some cool things, I think, we're
really
developed
looking doing a Patreon also.
All right. Perfect. Okay, guys. Take care of yourself. We'll see you next week.
Be mediocre.
Scream 3 coming soon.